Good morning, sir. I am going to discuss the parts and functions of the cell. First, what is cell? Cell is the basic structural, functional, and biological unit of all living things. The smallest unit that can live on its own and that makes up living organism and the tissues of the body. Next is cell has two types. It is eukaryotic cell and prokaryotic cell. First is eukaryotic cell. Eukaryotic cells are cells that contain a nucleus and organelles and are enclosed by a plasma membrane. Multicellular organisms that have eukaryotic cells include protozoa, fungi, plants, and animals. Eukaryotic cells contain a variety of structures called organelles, which perform various functions within the cell. This is the example of eukaryotic cell. As you can see, they have nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, smooth and rough, plasma membrane, lysosome, Golgi body, mitochondrion, cytoskeleton, ribosomes, and cytosol. Next is parts of eukaryotic cell. First part of eukaryotic cell is nucleus. Nucleus, a membrane-bound structure that contains the cell hereditary information and control the cell growth and reproduction. This is the example of nucleus. They have chromatin, nucleolus, nuclear pores, nuclear envelope. Next is endoplasmic reticulum. Growth endoplasmic reticulum is primarily concerned with the synthesis, folding, and modification of proteins, especially those that need to be delivered to different organelles within the cell or secreted from the cell. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum is largely associated with lipid manufacture and metabolism and steroid production, hormone production. It also has a detoxification function. This is the example of endoplasmic reticulum. Next is Golgi apparatus. Golgi apparatus, it receives biochemicals in a bulk flow from the rough endoplasmic reticulum. It is the only organelle in the cell that receives, sorts, modifies, concentrates, packs, and dispatches biochemicals for use inside and outside the cell. This is the example of Golgi apparatus. There is incoming transport vesicles, lumen, newly forming vesicle, transphase, cisternae, cisphase. Next is plasma membrane or cell membrane. It is the membrane found in the cell that separates the interior of the cell from the outside environment. The plasma membrane consists of lipid layer that is semi-permeable. That plasma membrane regulates the transport of materials entering and exiting the cell. It is the boundary between the cell and its environment. It regulates what enters and exits of the cell. This is the example of cell membrane and plasma membrane. Cell membrane inside of the cell, cytoplasm, protein channel, lipid layer, carbohydrate chains, and proteins. Next is microtubules. Microtubules are involved in mitosis, cell motility, intracellular transport, maintenance of cell shape, and keep organelle in place. Microtubules are composed of alpha and beta tubulin subunit assembled into linear protofilament. This is the example of microtubules. Next is centrosome. Centrosome is an organelle that is the main place where cell microtubules are organized. Organizing changes to the shape of the cell membrane that allow the membrane to pinch into two during cell division. Centrosome is a cellular structure involved in the process of cell division. Proteins are called microtubules assembled into a spindle between the two centrosomes and help separate the replicated chromosomes. This is the example of centrosome, centrioles, microtubules. Next is ribosome. Ribosome serves as the site of biological protein synthesis. They link together specific amino acid to form polypeptide, and they export this in cytoplasm. This is the example of ribosome. This is the ribosome. There is a small subunit and large subunit. Next is lysosomes, are organelles that contain digestive enzymes. They digest excess or worn out organelle, food particles, and infant viruses or bacteria. They are like the stomach of the cell, which are involved in digestion and waste removal. This is the example of lysosomes. There is a bacterium, phagocytosis, phagosome, lysosome. And next is mitochondria, referred to as the powerhouse of the cell. They may help turn energy we take from food into energy that the cell can use. And mitochondria is a calcium restoring. This is the example of mitochondria. Yeah. There's an outer membrane, ribosome, and anything else. Next is cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is a thick solution that fills each cell and is enclosed by the cell membrane, mainly composed of water, salts, and proteins. A framework of protein scaffolds called the cytoskeleton provides the cytoplasm and the cell with their structure, transport dissolved nutrients around the cell, and move waste material out of the cell. Next, this is the example of cytoplasm. Next is cilia. Cilia are eyelashes-like structure, microtubule based organelle that project from the surface of cells and serve both motile and sensory function. This is the example of cilia, as you can see. Yan. Next is flagellum. Flagellum is a whip-like structure that acts primarily as an organelle of locomotion in the cell of many living organisms. This is an example of flagellum. Yan, as you can see the line. Next is the second types of cell, prokaryotic cell. A single cell organism, they are simpler and smaller than eukaryotic cell and lack membrane-bound organelles such as nucleus. Example, bacteria and archaea. This is the example of prokaryotic cell. There is a capsule, cell wall, cell membrane, ribosome, chromosome, nucleus region. Next, capsule and cell wall. Capsule, it is the additional outer covering, protects that cell when it is influenced by other organisms, assists in retaining moisture, and helps the cell adhere to surfaces and nutrients. Source of nutrition when nutrient supply is low in the cell. This is the example of capsule and cell wall. Plasma membrane, cell wall. This is the cell wall and capsule. Capsule is yan. This is the addition of covering, protects the cell when it is influenced by the other organism. Cell wall is an outer covering that protects the bacterial cell and gives it shape. Next is pili. Pili is hair-like structure on the surface of the cell attached to other bacteria cell. This is an example picture of pili. Next is the functions of the cell. What is the functions of the cell? A cell is the structural and functional unit of life. Each cell contains smaller organelles that perform various functions such as metabolism, transportation, and secretion of substances. Because some cells perform a specific function, they have a special modified structure. For example, red blood cells are the oxygen carriers in the body. They lack of nucleus to make more space for the oxygen carrying pigment, hemoglobin. The various structure and organelle in the cell float in a liquid called. Next is the function of the cell. There's 6 main functions of cell. First is provide structure and support. Like a classroom is made of bricks, every organism is made of cell, while some cells such as the collechyma and sclerenchyma are specifically meant of structural support. All cells generally provide the structural basis of all organisms. For instance, skin is made up of number of skin cells. Vascular plants have involved special tissues called xylem, which made of cells that provide structural support. Second is facilitate growth through mitosis. In complex organisms, tissue grow by simple multiplication of cells. This takes place through the process of mitosis, in which the parent cell breaks down to form two daughter cells identical to it. Mitosis is also the process through which simpler organisms reproduce or give rise to new organisms. Next, the third six main functions of cell is allow passive and inactive transport. Cells import nutrients to use in the various chemical processes that going on the inside them. This process produces waste which a cell needs to get rid of small molecules such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, and ethanol get across the cell membrane through the process of simple diffusion. This is regulated with concentration gradient across the cell membrane. This is known as passive transport. However, large molecules such as proteins and polysaccharides go in and out of the cell through the process of active transport, in which the cells use vesicle and excrete or absorb large molecules. Next is produce energy. An organism's survival depends upon the thousands of chemical reactions that cells carry out relentlessly. For this reaction, cells require energy. Most plants get this energy through the process of photosynthesis, where various animals get their energy through the mechanism called respiration. Next is create metabolic reaction. Metabolism includes all the chemical reactions that take place inside an organism to keep it alive. This reaction can be catabolic or anabolic. The process of energy production by breaking down molecules is known as catabolism. Anabolic reaction, on the other hand, use energy to make bigger substance from simpler ones. Next is aids in reproduction. Reproduction is vital for the survival of species. A cell helps in reproduction through the process of mitosis and meiosis. In mitosis, cells simply divided to form new cells. This is termed asexual reproduction. Meiosis takes place in gametes or reproductive cells where there is a mixing or genetic information. This causes daughter cells to be genetically different from the parent cells. Meiosis is a part of sexual reproduction. Next is thank you. Keep safe always. Thank you for listening.